Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the OFFBEND podcast. We're super excited to see you guys again today for our fourth episode, each one hopefully getting a little bit better than the last. We've got some interesting things to cover for you today. As usual, we're going to have our entertainment headlines kind of first, and then we've got some real meat and potatoes today to talk about, a couple of different items, some recaps of some recent events and things like that. And then for our review segment, not to spoil anything, but we're going to be reviewing a TV show today, at least part of a TV show, which is a little bit of a shift from what we have done in the past. But by the next episode, we should shift back into our normal movie review cycle. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and move into the entertainment news. For this first one here, it's really just to give respect and condolences and put this out there. It's not a happy headline, but unfortunately, Eric Dane from Grey's Anatomy fame has been diagnosed with ALS. So I just wanted to offer my words of support to him and his family as they navigate these trying times. I know it's really, really tough diagnosis to receive for anybody, and I wish him all the best in his fight with this disease. I hope that there's some ground broken in the treatment and whatnot, but like I said, wishing all the best. We can move on from that one. The second one we have is Universal is announcing a $2 billion investment in new virtual production facilities. Really, the reason I put this one on here is because it illustrates that the industry is still very, very much alive. There's still a lot of money, talent, effort, and time being put into productions, production facilities, production equipment, production technology, R&D, all of these things. And that just goes to show that there's still a place for new innovation and new things in the film industry. And movies will continue to be made and continue to be made well. Thirdly, writers and studios reach a tentative agreement on AI usage guidelines. You know how we feel about this, right? Like AI should not be used to write scripts. It shouldn't be used to give notes to scripts or review scripts. If a writer wants to use it to get quick feedback, sure, but it should still always go through a human feedback loop regardless if you get feedback from an AI or not. But, it's good that the writers are having their best interest, I assume through the Writers Guild of America, having their best interest addressed by, and the studios obviously would rather opt for AI, right? Because it's cheaper for them than paying an actual creative artists to write their stories. But I hope that some sort of agreement can come out of this that is the optimal way to do this. So and then the next one here, and this is going to be the last one, a lot of streaming, this is a general statement, but a lot of streaming platforms have kind of shifted their focus to a quality over quantity structure for 2025. I can't say enough good things about this. That's our entire operating thesis. And it's easier for an indie to say that when they don't have unlimited resources, seemingly, to throw at project after project and hoping each one sticks. But I think the industry as a whole, entertainment as a whole, will be so much better when there's just less stuff and more good stuff, because you saturate the market far less. There's more time and more enablement for discovery of new projects, and then B, there's more good things out there. So per every project that you see or hear of or interact with, more of those will be good. So you'll get more people talking about the good things, get more people involved, get more people drawn in. That only helps breed more creation. It helps breed more community, all good things when you're talking about entertainment. So those are my 4 rapid fire headlines. Moving on to the next segment. And this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a really, really good one. Our scout trip recap. So Carson, Marshall, and I, we took a trip out to Louisiana, to a couple of big cities. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them. New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Go Tigers. But anyways, we took a trip out there, and it was an incredible experience, truly, for a lot of different reasons. I'll kind of dive in a little bit on a few things, and then I'll give Carson the mic, and he can talk a little bit about how his experience was, because I don't want to speak for him. But on my behalf, it was really, really awesome. So some context, going all the way back, high stakes. Premiere feature production was originally set in Los Angeles. So it's a period piece, at least it was a period piece when we were first ideating it, set in the 1970s. And when we were thinking of the 1970s, we thought of movies, and it's technically like the 60s, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one that came to mind, and that general aesthetic and vibe. And then there was the Paul Thomas Anderson movie Inherent Vice with Joaquin Phoenix, same kind of deal. 70s LA, hippies and just the carefree lifestyle, the sunlight, the breeze, the yellow colored tones, all that kind of stuff. And we really wanted to capture that in our film. Unfortunately, for a lot of different reasons, some financial, some just because of, natural disasters that occurred in LA. And then some just because of it was the smarter choice and we had to make the smarter choice just due to our circumstances. We're unfortunately not going to be pursuing shooting in LA anymore, at least not for this project. But that doesn't mean that hope is lost. In fact, we're more excited now than we really ever were. So we have moved. We are going to be shooting most of the project in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we're super excited. We met some really, really awesome people out in that area, saw some really, really great places, had some interesting experiences, but like I said, this isn't us settling. This is a good thing in my mind. I think the environment will lend itself to a better feel for the story and what we were going for than what we originally would have been able to accomplish in LA, just because of the way resource allocation would have gone and things like that. So with that said, the trip was awesome. We started the trip. Carson and I flew into New Orleans, and we landed in MSY Airport around, I would say, like 8:30 a.m. Saturday, April 5th. Marshall picked us up. We had coffee. We immediately went and saw our first location from the airport. It was good. It was a cool location. Full transparency. It was a cool spot. We went to a mansion. And, I'm not going to give away too much. But you guys, if you can piece things together, good for you, right? But I'm not going to give away too much about what the story's about. But the first place we saw was the Longview Mansion. It's a really cool venue. It's a really cool spot. But, enough about that. We immediately went on. We saw some more sites around New Orleans. So the really cool thing was Marshall was kind of our tour guide. He had lived both in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. He's actually an LSU grad, so that was cool. We had a nice Baton Rouge tour guide that had spent 4 years there, both on campus and off. But yeah, so we went and saw his old apartment in New Orleans, which was awesome. And then, we kind of ran around town just looking at a bunch of other spots. And we had lunch with somebody who we think is going to be really good addition to our team. More about that later. And we saw Bourbon Street. We got a beer. We walked around. We had a good time. Had some conversations. We had some discussions with police officers about drug laws in the city. There was some interesting conversations had there. But, it was overall a really fun and entertaining experience. And then we went on to Baton Rouge, and that's where we spent the next couple of days. Had some more meetings, met some more people, did some more interesting things that you could really only do in this place and that place. It just had a certain feel to it. Something was in the air there. I don't really know, but there were some really, really cool spots we saw. I'm curious, Carson, how was your experience? Am I capturing it well? Like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I loved it. It was definitely eye-opening, put a lot of things in perspective, like for what we have to do before we even can get down there to shoot. Yeah, like you said, a lot of interesting experiences that we can use for other things other than this film. I think we have definitely a couple funny stories that we can maybe create a couple other films from, but that's for another time, I guess.
Yeah, I think we can let everyone know the one interesting experience we had. So we were there. Well, this is kind of two interesting experiences in one. We were going to go axe throwing as like a nice little team activity, the three of us together bonding, because we had never met Marshall in person before. So this was the first time really getting to interact and be around him, and we wanted to make it a good, worthwhile, memorable experience. We suggested axe throwing. He had been there multiple times, so we went to this axe throwing place. We walk in, there's nobody there, but the lights are on, and then on the podium for like signing in and whatnot, there's a phone, there's some keys. Carson immediately heads straight back to the back to go to the restroom. Side note, this guy was using the restroom every 10 minutes on this trip. I don't know what was wrong with him.
Hey, I like to stay hydrated. That's all I know.
But yeah, he goes back to the restroom, and Marshall and I are just like super confused, like, hello, is anybody here? Because, who leaves their phone and keys? And the lights are on. But we start looking around. There's no merch on the walls. There's no axes anywhere. Nobody else is in there. There's no music playing. The environment is completely and utterly just dead. And we look down. There's like a wet floor sign on the ground. There's about an inch thick of dust on that thing. Nobody has been in there in a while. So immediately we're like, what is going on? Now, the interesting thing is Carson gives me a call around a few minutes after we realize this, and immediately our mind goes to, no, Carson just found a body. Like, we are in some deep stuff here now. So I'm like, Marshall, let's go back there and get him. Because Carson calls, he's like, hey guys, I'm stuck back here. A little bit anticlimactic, but I'm like, Marshall, let's go get him. I don't want to go back there by myself. We go back there, and Marshall's about to open the door, and Carson starts knocking on it. And Marshall backs up. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like yelling through the door. I'm like, Carson, is that you? Carson? Carson's like, yeah, it's me. Let me out. I'm stuck. And so we let him out. And, we walk out. We call the non-emergency police line
Hold on,
because the doors are unlocked. The
before
lights
you
are on.
go off on that, I'll the back bathroom. It was already creepy enough. Like, I go through the door, and it like slams shut, and it's like shit. Hopefully, I don't get stuck. But I mean, I still had to go to the bathroom, so I go, and then when I'm walking back, I, like try the door, and like I don't think it was locked, but it just the way the door was like when it shut, I guess it just was way too close to the door hinge. So I called Hayden, and that's when they were like freaking out because they thought I had saw something back there. But yeah, no, I was just trying to get out of that back room as fast as possible.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I would want to as well. But yeah, I should back up a little bit. Before we called the non-emergency line, we went over to the bar next door and we were like, hey, we just went in there and they were like, yeah, they've been closed for months, like a while now. So we're like, this is really weird. And the really weird thing about it was there was an axe in the podium and I didn't want that to be like, I should have backed up even a little bit more. The phone that was on the counter, dead, wouldn't turn on. The keys, we don't know who they belong to. That's kind of the weirdest part about all this because who travels anywhere without those items? But it was clear they hadn't been there in a while, whoever did leave those things. But again, we went over to the next door spot. We asked them like, what's going on? They said it's closed. All right, we call the non-emergency police line, tell them that it's weird. We don't want to be implicated in anything just in case something shady did go on there. We had gone there. We wanted to admit that, be upfront about that, protect ourselves. But yeah, that ended up leading us to the next interesting experience, which honestly was worse, but also better, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a comedy club. And I'm like, Marshall, we should go see a comedy show. Marshall's like, oh, I actually know the guy who used to work there. His name was, I think, Mark or something like that. So we go over there. We were waiting on the police to show up. And it's open mic night Sundays. Just perfect timing.
Yeah,
And it was going to start. It was like,
10 minutes before it was supposed to start. It was like it was meant
exactly.
to be that we were supposed to be there.
Yeah. Total happenstance, but it was meant to be. Like we were subjected to this show, and it probably was more like a punishment. Like I don't know what we did wrong, but it was something else. But we get in there. They're like, "Hey guys, you want to sign up to do some comedy?" And we're like, "Absolutely not. We don't want to do that." We file into this room and we realize, shit, we are the only audience members in this entire room. Everybody else is a comedian. That is not good. Comedian's a stretch, by the way. I'm not sure I would give that label to any of these guys. I mean, they tried. They certainly tried. There was effort put forth. But, a few of them had their moments, but most of them, I kid you not, there was one guy in this show didn't get a single laugh or even a
Oh
a
yeah.
snicker, like nothing. He was literally terrible.
It was his
And
first time going up there, so I mean,
I mean it respectfully. His jokes made no sense. Like he would just start telling a story. Like, bro, if you're gonna pull from like situational comedy like that, you gotta have a punchline of sorts.
yeah,
You can't just
zero
like
punchline.
give a recount. Yeah, he was just giving a recount of the events, like making noises. Like he was talking about this guy who was like drunk driving or something, and his oil pan fell off his car. But he just told it like a story. Like nothing about it was funny. He was like, "Oh yeah, we found this drunk driver, and his oil pan fell off." Like, okay, and
He almost said it like this guy was
hilarious.
drunk driving, waiting for like the laugh to end, and nobody was laughing.
Literally, and his last joke, he was like, "All right, screw this, I'm done. Whatever," because nobody was laughing. It was a room full of unfunny people, and he couldn't even get a laugh from them. That was the worst part.
I
And a
only
lot of the joke, I mean,
I only was laughing because of how awkward it like the situation was. Like it just was hard to not like almost just like sitting there silent was worse than just being like have just like a casual like fake laugh, I guess. And then
no, that's totally fair.
these guys made me be judged because Hayden and Marshall both pointed at me. The host was like, "Oh, we need another judge," and he was like dead staring at all three of us because we're the only other people in there besides the comedians. And the person that I voted for didn't win, but I mean, hey, it's okay.
Yeah, it's life, No, it was just super interesting. We had to stay the entire time because Carson was the guest judge of honor or whatever. So we had to watch every single person go up there. And there was a few guys who were just like saying stuff. It was like, why would you say that? Like, I get it. Comedy, there's no bounds or whatever. You can say whatever you want. And, I'm all for like funny jokes that, have a punchline, even if they're a little offensive. But like, I'm not with all the just being offensive for the sake of it and there's no real humor to it. You know what I mean? Like you're just being a kind of an ass.
It also kind of sucked because they said a lot of jokes like for the area, and like we're not obviously not from there, so it was kind of hard to get those jokes. I mean, obviously like the pothole jokes are funny because that's kind of universal, but um, I don't know. It was definitely a tough watch and listen the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of those things where it was like, yeah, we're gonna remember that for a while. But it was also like that was not a good comedy show.
I mean, hey, like
And
shout out to those guys for having the balls to get up there, but maybe they need to learn when to quit.
yeah, it almost felt to me like instead of just having a general love for comedy and like a desire to do that, like and make people laugh, they were just up there because they were like, well, I'm gonna be the next, what's that guy's name? He's like famous on TikTok and whatever. His name's like 10 or something. He's hilarious. Can't remember his name though. But they want to be the next like social media star comedian instead of just going up there and working on their craft and riffing and making like being better. They're like, oh, how can I get rich fast and be a niche micro celebrity in the comedian space? And you can tell the motivation's there for the wrong reasons. There was one guy, I swear to you, he went up there and instead of doing comedy is good when there's a mix of like storytelling and punchlines and you kind of build around it. You're having a good time, having a conversation, not necessarily with anybody, but just out in the open. You're saying you're there's a continuity about it. This guy literally went up there, looked up like best jokes of 2025 on his phone and just started reading the list. And I was like, dude, you can't just rattle off joke after joke after joke like it's the back of a Laffy Taffy like rapper. Like these aren't funny. Like these are the worst one-liners ever. And then there was another guy. Honestly, he was one of my favorites, but he was going so fast. Like he would say a joke, immediately on to the next. And granted, they didn't have a lot of time, but I don't know. It was just so interesting. Like what compelled these people to think they were good at this? Because some of them definitely thought they were. They're like, I don't want to single anybody out, but there was a few in there that were like being hyped up, like they were really good comedians, and they just like were not. So, anyways, enough about the comedy show because that was only a small part of the trip, but it was definitely an interesting part, and I think we learned a lot about Baton Rouge when we were doing that. So, with that said, and again, congratulations to all those guys for having the stones to go up there and do that. Everyone should go check out open mic night at the Boomerang Comedy Club in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is our plug. It's the only time we're ever going to plug
I was about to say,
Boomerang Comedy Club.
are we name dropping?
Yeah, well, it's too late now. We already did. So,
Because I was gonna say,
anyways,
I was gonna say the joke that I had after we had gone. You remember what I said? I said I came up with a joke. Do you want to hear it? And I said,
you got to tell it.
okay, so this is how it goes. I went up to Hayden and Marshall and I was like, hey guys, I thought of a joke. You want to hear it? And then they were like, yeah. And I said, the Boomerang Comedy Club. Basically the jokes that probably would have killed at the Boomerang Club though. So shout out to them.
Yeah, yeah. And if you were ever considering a career in stand-up comedy, there's no better place to start that career than Boomerang Comedy Club. I promise you, if you walk in there on any given open mic night, you will not be the worst person in there. I promise you. You will be better than somebody. It's just, you have to be.
Just make a joke.
But anyways,
just make a joke about how much drugs you do, and then you'll kill. You'll really kill.
yeah, genuinely, that's literally all it takes. People love those jokes. Some other hot topics were OnlyFans. That one was a big hitter.
Hayden, I guess, is a supporter
Identities.
of the community from just laughing at one of the jokes.
Yeah. The crowd work was insane. They started singling me out. Anyways, yeah, crazy comedy show. Everyone should go check out Boomerang Comedy Club if you're ever in town, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Those guys, they put themselves out there. Kudos to them. Moving on. So, that was a small part of what we experienced in Baton Rouge. But again, there's some really, really cool locations. And we got to see some cool studio space out there. Some things that really opened our eyes to how this shoot is going to look, how the movie's going to look on screen. As first-time filmmakers, and we say that not to label ourselves filmmakers, but we are making a film. So by definition, we are filmmakers. But we understand that we are the least knowledgeable people working on this project by far. There's a lot of people that we're working with that our industry veterans. They know what they're doing. Marshall is only one of those people, and we hope to introduce you to more of those people as the project gets deeper and deeper, into pre-production, production, post, including the director, writer, etc. We'd like to have them on the show, at least for a small segment.
One thing I was thinking of that like we don't have that much film experience is like the limitations. Like we might not know the limitations that like some people who have been in the film know. So it's just like a different perspective on like what we can and can't do. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting aspect of us starting this. But sorry to interrupt.
No, no, you're good. No, definitely. Like that's one of those things. Like we are going into this with very naive set of eyes. We are thinking like we can do all this stuff, but feasibly and within budget and with the resources that we have, with the crew that we're gonna attain, the cast that we're gonna attain, some of it's not gonna be possible, and that's okay. This is our first movie. We're really, really dialed in on making sure it's the best that it can be. We're hoping that it's a really, really good film that resonates with a lot of people. We hope it's a good theatrical experience, but beyond that, we understand that we don't know what the hell's going on, and we are putting a lot of trust into those around us that do. That said, though, we really are learning quite a bit. I feel like even just in the past few months, like we've learned so much that we previously like it was not even on our radar. So I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of us taking the steps to be receptive, surround ourselves with the right people, and I think that's really what's going to make Off-Bend successful in the long term, is really trusting those around us, treating everybody with deference and respect, and knowing that it's good to not be the smartest person in the room, because that means you have something to learn. But anyways, to kind of close on the scout trip, like I said, we hit a lot of different locations. We had some good food. We tried some different spots. It was awesome. It was truly great to be out there, boots on the ground, seeing everything there was to see. We got to see campus, LSU. Unfortunately, the Tiger was out. He had some surgery the day before, so we didn't get to see him. But Mike, if you're listening, we'll be there. We'll be there next time. And you better be out, because I was quite disappointed. But it's okay. I forgive you.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. But anyways, there was tons to see, tons to do. We had a short weekend. We'll be back prior to shooting. We'll be back sometime this summer, late summer, before shooting starts later this year. And we couldn't be more excited. Carson, is there anything else you wanted to wrap up on the trip before we move on to the next thing here?
I mean, we'll definitely be back, but maybe not to the Boomerang Club.
Maybe not. Hey, but next time I might have a set prepared. I might have to go up there
I
on
was
stage
I was
and
thinking about
kill.
that. Maybe we should go and say some jokes.
Yeah, why not? What's stopping us? Like I said, there's no way we would be the worst people. I guarantee we'd get more laughs than that one guy that got literally 0 laughs.
And then, hey, I mean, if we don't get any laughs, we can just storm off like he did. Easy.
Yeah.
We're not like locked in to staying on the stage, I guess.
We could just start personally insulting all the people in the crowd. Like, you know what? You're not going to laugh at my jokes? Okay. That's why you got a bald head looking ass. Or something like that.
I kind of wish they like forced us to go up there, because then like I would have just gone into crowd work and said the stupidest shit.
I would have just been like, what's the deal with airplane food? And I just would have started going off of that. Anyways, super awesome. We'll be back. Maybe we will be. Maybe you'll catch us at a show. Boomerang Comedy Club. Last shout out I'm giving. That's free press. Moving on. So the trip was awesome. But the next thing I wanted to go over was an initiative that is of growing importance as Off-Bend established itself further in the film industry. We would really, really like to bring film to Texas. And I'll dive into what I mean by that. I don't know if anybody has been getting the advertisements from McConaughey and Harrelson and Glenn Powell, etc. All Texas guys through and through. Austin is clearly a growing film area, right? The cultural arts are strong down there, but it's not even near up to par with New York or LA. Those are the two giants, the two bastions of film. And I think it's time for a change there. So one thing I really want to bring light to is Off-Bend's initiative to be a major player in the growth of film in Texas. So I want to announce our commitment. After filming High Stakes and it has wrapped, we are going to establish a principal office location in Dallas, Texas. And from there, our goal is to build out a major studio ecosystem in this area. Austin's great. Texas is a massive state, though. I think Dallas could really use some resources as well. Granted, they're only about 3 to 4 hours apart, depending on when you drive, because the traffic's insane. I'm presently physically based in Dallas, and I see a real major opportunity here for that. In doing that, I think it's important for us to engage in thoughtful conversation with government leaders and things like that to, discuss incentives and how can we bring filmmaking here, because it is important to talk about. One thing that made me really think about this a little bit more was when we were in Baton Rouge, seeing all the developments that had already been made there. I mentioned we toured a studio lot. I won't mention them by name just in case they don't want to be mentioned, but it was a really cool spot. We saw, so much stuff that we thought only existed in Hollywood, like it was crazy. The people driving around on golf carts. We drove around on golf carts, actually. There's multiple different lots, multiple different buildings, and all of it is either office space for filmmakers or spots where things were filmed. And some major productions were filmed there. And that really signaled to me I haven't seen anything like that in my area, surrounding area. And I think there's a massive opportunity because Texas is home to so many people, so many backgrounds, so many stories, and there's so much that could be done to transform. And, it's centrally located in the United States. Presently, New York's on the East Coast, and then we have LA on the West Coast. What can I say about both of those places? Most people can't affordably live there, for one. They're cost prohibitive, or, comfortably live there. They're cost prohibitive. It's hard to move out there, especially if you don't have a massive safety net or someone funding your lifestyle or whatever. Texas isn't necessarily like that. It's a little bit expensive, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not New York or LA expensive. But anyways, as studios expand and industry trends shift, we're really trying to position ourselves at the forefront of Texas film. There will be more information about this soon. I plan on putting out some information on our socials about this and, the initiative as we dive further into it. But, stay tuned for more on this. We're going to go into a deep dive in the future on, how these developments will help shape the future of film in Texas. I just wanted to put it out there. I'm super excited about it. Again, I think there's a massive, massive opportunity here to create a real community out here, and I'm excited to dive into it. Yeah, Carson, any thoughts on that? Anything I didn't say?
I mean, nothing I can think of. I feel like Texas is definitely a great spot to call a home base, and I'm looking forward to the future of that.
Awesome. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, the next segment is going to be a little bit different. And I know we've been changing it up a lot, for one reason or the other, most of it logistical. We started out, we were doing 3 movies a week, and then we did 2 movies a week, and then we did 1. So, and then in our last 3 episodes, we went from 3 movies to 1. And now we're not even doing a movie at all. Now we're doing a TV show. What TV show? Well, that is The Studio, starring Seth Rogen. Catherine Hahn is also a major player. The guy that plays Sal, who has that face that everybody knows, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and I feel terrible about that. I did know it at one point, though, and he's a great actor, and he's a really good guy. And, there's a plethora of celebrity cameos in it as well. There's 4 episodes out right now, and we're going to talk about those 4 episodes, dive in a little bit to each one. I might give my rating on each. We can see where it goes from there. And then I'll give you my rating on the show overall. I know it's only 4 episodes, so it's not really fair to give a full rating so far, but I'm excited to do so anyways, because who cares? We make the rules. First episode.
I can't believe you didn't mention Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston. You see, I totally forgot because he was only in the first episode, right? Or I guess he was in the second one a little bit. Episode 1, Matt Remick, played by Seth Rogen. He's named the new head of Continental Studios, which is the fictional studio that the studio is based on. He's put in charge of a project that threatens public humiliation. Are we doing spoilers? Should we do spoilers? Because I can tell what this project was if we are. You tell me.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So the project was Kool-Aid. They acquired the IP for the Kool-Aid Man. And Bryan Cranston's character, who's the CEO of Continental, who is, the boss of the studio head, he wanted them to make a Kool-Aid movie immediately. And, context here, Matt Remick, the character, he wanted to challenge the industry. He wanted to bring back creative art house films. He wanted to do all the things differently than the previous studio head. So his first project, naturally, is going to be a Kool-Aid movie. After he had already said all this to Variety magazine and everything, he's, embarrassed. He doesn't want to do that. He thinks he's going to get laughed at. So he's looking for a way out. Lo and behold, Martin Scorsese's making a Jamestown movie, which, if you guys are not familiar, Jamestown is the...
I thought it was Jonestown.
Unfortunate... Or Jonestown, maybe. I don't know. That sounds right.
Maybe they...
Jamestown, I think, is the...
I think...
colony, right?
Maybe it is actually Jamestown, and they, switched it up, so it's not, They said I know they said Jonestown in the show, but maybe they had to switch it up, so it wasn't...
It could be Jonestown. Honestly, that sounds right. Because it was Jim Jones, right? That was the guy that was doing it. I think it was Jonestown. But anyways, that was the whole cult following thing. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. So it tied in because of that. So they were going to make a Kool-Aid movie titled Kool-Aid, but about that. At least that's what Seth Rogen wanted to do. Directed by none other than Martin Scorsese. This episode was funny, man. He greenlit the movie for $250 million or something like that budget. And then he immediately took it back and was like, nah, we're not going to make this movie. Martin's like, can I have my script back then at least? And he's like, no, sorry, can't do that. Yeah, then nobody's going to make the movie.
He bought the script for $10 million.
Yeah, so now nobody's going to make the movie at all. They bought a script for no reason. just totally cold. And now they're making the Kool-Aid movie after all, after that teaser of the Kool-Aid man breaking through the wall, blew the roof off of the CEO, Bryan Cranston, or whatever his name is in the show. This episode was funny. It was a great introduction into what the show is going to be like. And I love the way that this show is shot. They do a lot of one-shot, oneers, I guess is the phrase, where it's just the camera following, people doing whatever with no cuts. I think that's awesome. I love I'll call it Succession style because that's what it reminds me of. But I'm sure they didn't create or invent this style of shooting. But in Succession, the camera's kind of wobbly. It creates a sense of like realness, some authenticity. You're actually there in the atmosphere, witnessing all this happen. I think that's awesome. I think that vibe, that things that evoke that, I'm instantly drawn in and enjoy watching. But yeah, Carson, what do you think of the first episode? Did it do it for you? Did it make it something that you want to continue watching, or
Yeah,
you were like, meh?
yeah, I liked it. I thought it was funny, and like sort of in a way of like some stuff we can take from it, just the kind of stuff we can learn almost in the sense of like what not to do, I guess, as starting the studio. And then stuff that like obviously it's blown way out of proportion, but I mean for the most part, like Seth having to go, or I guess Matt in the show, but played by Seth Rogen, he has to kind of go by what his boss wants him to do so he doesn't get fired. But in the sense of like that's almost the opposite of what we want. Like we want people to stay in their creative mindset and not have to worry about like specifically what we think is going to be the best movie or anything like that. Obviously we want our movies to be successful, but we still want them to be original and creative and not be held in a box.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I 100% agree. And the thing about it is, really, it's got to be, the show does a really good job at explaining things to the general viewer. And for the people with a really keen eye, you can learn a lot from it, like you said. And I think that's my favorite part of it so far, is what the exposure that I'm getting to, obviously over dramatized events, but these things do really happen, like people buy scripts all the time just to get the rights so nobody else can make movies, whether for pettiness or because they buy it, thought they can make it and can't, or whatever it is. That does happen. Things like that do happen. Maybe not to that extent, but like at the end of the day, studios are run by people. The final decisions are people, and people are inherently irrational. They're inherently unpredictable. So you never know what's going to happen. And film or any industry really, but especially with the egos that you get in film on all sides, on the studio corporate side, on the talent, actor side, on the crew, director, DP, all of the assistant directors, writers, gaffers, even like, people like that. Everyone has opinionated to some degree, and they're all going to think that things should be done a certain way, and they're going to do it their way. And, that's why you hear so much about people butting heads and whatever. But I really do like the show so far. But that first episode, I would give it, just as a first introductory episode where we're being introduced to the characters and how they interact with each other and the general vibe there, I'm going to give that episode like a general 8.5, 9. I thought it was a really good way to introduce the characters, instantly launched them into out of 10. Sorry, I know we usually use a 5-point rating scale, but this is TV. We do things differently with TV. I think it introduced them really well. It gave each of them their own kind of shining moment. Catherine Hahn's character, again, Sal, who, again, I can't remember his name. I really feel bad about that. I'm so sorry, man. Not that you're listening to this, but maybe you are. I don't know. Seth Rogen's character, Matt, Bryan Cranston's character. Everyone had their shining moment, essentially, is what I'm saying. And it was a great way to introduce the characters. So yeah, 8.5, 9 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'll have to piggyback that. The one example I can think of is Seth Rogen's character. When he first gets introduced, he comes on to that set and he like is talking to the actor and the director, and like they kind of don't respect him because he is like the studio kind of like very businessy kind of guy, and he wants to give them like some tips, I guess, or like what he thinks could like be a great addition to the scene that they're making, and they just kind of like brush him off like, who is this guy, like he shouldn't even be here type of thing almost. But then he like it just like right away, like you get the feeling that like nobody really respects him, and you can kind of see that later on in the second episode, which we'll get to. But it's just like a really good intro to the characters, like you said.
For sure. And that leads right into the next episode, which I think the first two, if I recall correctly, the first two, they actually launched on the same day, like the opening day. So 2 episodes came out. The second one was based on like a one shot, an intricate sunset shot, and Matt was visiting set, and everyone was like either kissing ass or just being generally rude to him for one reason or
first of
another.
all,
Everyone was trying to get stuff out of him.
they were trying to keep him off the set. Like they didn't even want him to be on the set at all.
Right. And I think that's generally true. Nope. There's a term in film. People call, agents and studio heads and managers, they call them suits. Why is that? Because they disrupt the creative process. They have always notes to give and things to say, and bureaucracy. That's really what it boils down to. Bureaucracy gets in the way of directors and writers and DPs and actors being able to execute their vision. And Matt is inherently, being a studio head, a suit. But the interesting dichotomy is he's also a creative at heart. He loves film. He loves movies. He wants to make good ones, and he wants to be involved in the process. And he wants to be well liked by the people working on the films, but they just don't like him because he falls in the bucket of being a suit. To me, I love that they're doing that, because honestly, that's the way I would feel in his shoes. I feel a lot of myself in that, because I'm interested in film as a business, and the way things are executed with that, but I'm also interested in film on the creative side and how films are made and from start to finish. So being in Matt Remick's shoes would be awesome. Being a studio head would be awesome. Stressful, but awesome. But it would kind of suck if everyone just doesn't respect you because that's your job, So I understand where the internal kind of struggle is for him. And the whole time, he's so oblivious to the fact that one girl is like being super nice to him, like twirling her hair when she talks to him and stuff. And like, she just wants to ride a private jet to the press tour. That's all she wants the whole time. But he's like, wow, everyone here is being so nice to me today. He just has no idea. Like, oh yeah, dude, I wonder why. This episode's really good too, though. What did you come away thinking about it? I mean, I'm curious. You saw this one, right? The second one?
I'm not sure if I finished it, but I think the funniest part, you bring up the suit aspect. And I'm sure they meant to do this, but he shows up to set in a suit, and I think it was the PA or one of the people on set, like, immediately call his name, and he's like, "Are you the new studio head or whatever?" And he's like, "Oh, how'd you know?" or whatever. And he said, "Well, I mean, you're wearing a suit," or something like that, like, obviously playing into that aspect. And so he's like, shit, I don't want to be seen like that. So he goes and changes with the costumes for the set. And next thing you know, like later on in the episode, he has to like change out because he's wearing something that one of the characters needs. So yeah, just a lot of like little details like that bring a little bit more comedic aspect to it.
No, absolutely. And he changes into the clothes that they need for the shot, the guy's clothes in the end scene that they're trying to film. So essentially, the director is kissing ass because she wants to use a song in the film and she wants some money. But Seth just keeps Matt rather, he just keeps screwing things up over and over again. By the end, he's like running out of there, like, all right, I'm leaving. You can have whatever you want, whatever. The jet's yours. Extra budget for the song. Go ahead, whatever. I don't care. This episode, to me, was the weakest of the 4 I've seen so far, but that doesn't mean it was bad. I would give it like a 7.5. And that's only because the other ones are so good. I would feel remiss if I rated it too highly and then, wasn't able to give the others the proper respect that they deserve. But what do you think of what you saw? And then we can dive into the next two.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see what you're saying. It might be a little bit slower because they do have to kind of go through the shot a couple of times, but I mean, I guess a 7.5. It's
Cool.
going to be hard to judge
8.
the next couple, but
yeah, I can give you the rundown though. So Carson hasn't seen these next two, but I'm gonna spoil them for him anyways because that was his homework and he failed to do it. So, but to his credit, I gave him a late notice, so it's all right. Episode 3 was they were making a movie and it starred Anthony Mackie. Was directed by Ron Howard. Also starred Dave Franco, which was pretty cool. But essentially, Matt feels nervous about giving director Ron Howard a difficult piece of feedback. So the episode starts out, they're screening the movie of Ron Howard's new film. They get through it, everyone really likes it, except for this one segment, which is tied to a motel sequence with Anthony Mackie's character and a younger kid. It's kind of a brooding sequence, depressing a little bit. It turns out, though, that it goes back to Ron Howard's childhood, his cousin. He lost his cousin, and this was kind of like his homage to his cousin. So they figure that out, and everyone's like, dude, we gotta tell him that this like sucks. It ruins the entire movie. But everyone's afraid to tell him that because they're worried that he might blow up on him because it's his movie and whatever. But also B, it's a good movie, but if this stayed in, they wouldn't succeed. So the whole movie's kind of them finagling around that. And towards the end, there's a lot of build up to that. we realized like Anthony Mackie's siding with Ron the whole time. He's like, oh, that motel sequence was so impactful, yada, yada, yada. But the second Ron leaves, he's like, dude, that shit is terrible. We got to take that out the movie. Someone got to tell him. And then Matt Remick's like, you got to tell him. Why do I got to tell him? You tell him. And Anthony Mackie's like, that's your job. I'm an actor. And they're like, you're a producer too. And he's like, executive producer or something like that. And so eventually they tell him in the boardroom, and he gets mad and he starts making fun of Matt, because the reason that he was afraid to give the note is because he gave a note to Ron Howard before, a long time ago, on a different movie that gave away the twist of the movie. And so essentially he made fun of him. He was like, would you go up to David Fincher and say, hey, let's reveal that Durden was made up the whole time in Fight Club, that he was a fake guy, Tyler Durden? Would you go tell Fincher that he should just reveal the whole twist at the beginning of the movie? And he just kept doing stuff like that. You know, he gave other examples as well, because it was one of his movies that had a twist. I forget which one it was. But essentially, they ended up getting in like a fist fight, like literally. And then at the end, they were on the phone. He called the phone. Ron Howard called him at the end, and he was like, hey, man, I just want to let you know I removed that scene from the movie. I was letting my emotional biases get in the way of a good film, and we're good. And then Seth's like, yeah, thanks, man. I'm sorry for calling you a dick or whatever you called him. And then at the end of the call, he was like, oh, and hey, Matt. And Matt was like, yeah? And he was like, you ever cross me again, I'll fucking kill you, or something like that. And that's how the episode ended. It was just like a zoom in on Seth Rogen's face, which, you know, good episode. Really good episode. I think it captured the notes thing really well, because, you know, that's the hardest thing. Working with a big studio, yes, you get the big studio money, but you also get the big studio bureaucracy, and you have to go through all these different layers of people having opinions on the project, and not often are they right. You know, usually it's best served by just letting the good director, especially a Ron Howard, or, you know, even on another level, a Chris Nolan, a David Fincher, you know, as we've already mentioned, and so on, you know, letting those guys, James Cameron, and Marty Scorsese, etc., letting those guys execute on their own vision is always a good idea. But in this circumstance, it really wasn't. You know, they had the right idea. So it showed the way that you approach that, and it also had the backstory that made it, you know, the context made it a little more interesting also. I think this episode hit it out the park, but it's not my favorite one. The favorite one is the fourth one. So I'm going to give this one, and, you know, Carson isn't going to rate it because it wouldn't be in good faith because he hasn't seen it. But when he comes back next week, he's going to have ratings for us, and that's going to be one of the first things we cover. So he better be ready.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, sorry. I'm going to give it, let's see. If I gave the last one a 7.5, I'll give this one an 8.5. So let's say this. Let's episode 1, I'll put it at an 8. Episode 2, 7.5. Episode 3, 8.5. And now episode 4. Diving into a little bit about what this one is. It's a kind of neo-noir movie, detective movie. They're on the hunt. They're on the case. It's Matt and Sal. They're looking for a missing reel of film that, if it isn't found, has to be reported, and it's going to require reshoots. And, you know, they're already at budget. They need more money. It's directed by Olivia Wilde, starring Zac Efron. In this sequence, they're called by Olivia Wilde. Like, where's the film reel? We got to find it. And then they go to find it, and, you know, it puts them on a whole journey of exploration and seeing what's going on. So essentially, they end up suspecting a number of different people, but it's stylistically like a neo-noir detective movie, like an old-timey detective movie. It's super cool, the way that they did this episode. But eventually, they go question Zac Efron. He's like, no, dude, like, I'm just here filming, you know, just doing my thing. And then he's like, everyone hates Olivia, man. She's been so tough on everybody. So that's kind of the common theme. Because Olivia, when she's asked about the crew, they're like asking her, like, well, would anybody here on the crew or cast steal from you? Like, does anybody have any problems with it? And she's like, my crew is like my family. Nobody would ever do that. And then every person they talk to on the crew are like, yeah, she was terrible. Like, I will never work with her again. Because she was like super overbearing and just like crazy and like so dedicated to perfection or whatever. So the way that it played out was essentially Zac Efron was suspected at first because, you know, vendetta or whatever. Turns out, though, that he was just plotting. Matt Remick, he said no to a wrap party because they were already over budget on the film. So he said, no, we're not going to pay for a party for everyone to celebrate the wrapping of the filming. Everyone was mad at him for that. So Zac Efron, out of pocket, threw a wrap party at his own house. But he kept that a secret from Seth Rogen. But he invited Sal. So Seth thought that Sal betrayed him because he followed him to the wrap party. He goes in, he's like, da da da. But that's not really what happened, obviously. So he feels embarrassed, dejected, he leaves, and then they realize, shit, Olivia stole the reel. because she wants to do reshoots. But in this reel, she had done a cameo in the film as the director. She did a cameo, and she said it was the best work she'd ever done, like Oscar-worthy work, which is cool and all. But she gave a whole spiel as to why she did it. Eventually, it's revealed that it was her, and blah blah blah. Eventually, though, she takes it out of the packaging. They find it in her purse. She takes it out of the packaging, and they're on like a really big hill, like a road hill. She just tosses it. It starts rolling.
I've seen this clip before, and Seth chases it.
It just totally unspools. It's ruined. It's done. And oh, that was the big thing. She shot on film, and shooting on film is so much more expensive. But yeah, it unspools. So he ends up having to sell his car to Zac Efron for $2 million. It was the first, or one of the first Corvettes, 19 something ever made. $2 million, and then he pays for the reshoots out of pocket, completely out of pocket. And that was how the episode ended. But this episode is so awesome, stylistically, just really awesome. I love the neo-noir aesthetic of it. I thought it was really cool that they were able to accomplish such a thing. And to me, this one hit it out the park. This is as close to a 10 as I can get. I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10, genuinely. Recapping that's episode 1. We're going to give it an 8, 2, 7.5, 3, 8.5, episode 4, 9.5. So way, like, it's a whole step above the next highest. Super impressive episode. And Carson, don't let this influence your judgment. We're still interested to hear what you have to think next week. And there will be another episode, so we'll also cover episode 5 for you, just because Carson has to talk about it again.
Won't there be 2?
And there will be 2 more episodes. I keep forgetting that we don't do this weekly. It's only bi-weekly. It's messing with my head a little bit. So yeah, there'll be 2 more episodes. So Carson will cover 3, 4, 5, and 6 next time, and I'll cover 5 and 6 as well. But we'll also have some movies to cover, because obviously there's some big ones that have come out, Minecraft, and there's the Drop movie coming out. Yeah, there's some good ones that we got to go see. So, but yeah, I mean, the studio's been awesome so far. Great job to Seth and Evan and Point Grey Pictures. Seth is one of my favorite guys in the industry. I hope that, one day I do get to talk to him, because I think artistically him and I are very aligned. Like, I think he really does care about making good, fun movies. Obviously he dominated in the stoner comedy genre for a while, but he's developing into some more work, and I think it's really important that he continues to be a major player, because he does his best to put good work on the screen. And even his stoner comedy stuff had more depth to it than just being stupid. There's plenty of stupid movies out there, but his movies were always a little bit more layered than that, and tried to explore more about the characters and their motivations and whatnot. So I think he's a fixture for a reason, and I hope we get to meet him someday. That'd be sick. But yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the studio, I did just spoil the first 4 episodes, so I'm sorry about that. But still worth watching. It's on Apple TV Plus. The episodes release weekly on Wednesdays, so yeah, go check it out. I highly recommend. It is way, way better than anything you'll find at the Boomerang Comedy Club. All right, I'm done mentioning that for real. But yeah, I think that's kind of really all we have for today's episode, Carson. Unless I'm forgetting something, I think that's the bulk of it. Yeah, I mean, you got any closing remarks before we wrap it up?
Maybe one day, like, the Boomerang Club will explode, because our fans come back and watch this and listen to this, and they're like, man, I got to check this club out, So I think we really have done our part to market the Boomerang Club for them. So, yeah, I'm definitely excited to finish those other 2 episodes, and then the 2 that are coming out. So yeah, so far I really like the studio, and it's a great show.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, we here at OFFBEND, we support small businesses, and we want to see everyone succeed, including the Boomerang Comedy Club. So if your small business would like to be featured on our next podcast, you just have to present us with a weird and obscure enough experience in our visit to be memorable and worth mentioning. That's the only requirements. Anyways, though, yeah, like Carson said, the studio is great. I did want to give one plug to another show, and this is a major show, so it's not like an underground show or anything like that. But if you guys haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend watching The Pit on Max. It is a phenomenal hospital show. It's like Grey's Anatomy, but without all the weird soap opera love story kind of stuff going on. It's kind of straight to the business, studying the characters, their reactions, their convictions, their beliefs, all that kind of stuff within the ER. Does a really, really good job on maintaining a level of authenticity and reality, and how desolate and at times hopeless being an ER doc can feel. And some crazy stuff happens in this show. The entire first season, it's 15 episodes. Each episode is 1 hour of the day. So it happens all in the course of one day. Over 15 episodes. 15 hours of content is 15 hours of day. That's insane. And then the second episode is going to be set in 4th of July weekend. So that's going to be interesting too, because a lot of weird things happen with that. People just doing dumb stuff while drunk with fireworks, you know. But yeah, can't recommend that enough. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm about halfway through the 15th episode now. Up to this point, it's been really, really awesome. But anyways, everybody, that's gonna wrap it up for us today. I appreciate you all tuning in again for our 4th episode. You know, I read something that said most podcasts don't make it to the 7th episode, so we're more than halfway there. We're excited to hit that mark and break that mark and continue this for a long, long time. I imagine in the next year this show will really start to evolve, especially after we open our office. Hopefully we can get a nice recording studio built in there, some better cameras, some better sound equipment, some spots for guests, some stuff like that, and really make this a really fun watch and listen on a regular basis for everybody. Again, if you're supporting us now, you know, I just want everyone to know it means more than you could ever really know to us. We really rely on the support from each and every person. Being so small, the magnitude of each and every person's support is that much more felt and seen, and none of it goes unnoticed regardless. So, you know, thanks for taking a chance on us. Thanks for believing in us. We love sharing our journey. We know that we're doing something interesting. We're doing something that not a lot of people do. It's uncharted territory for us as well, and we're still learning, and we hope we can teach you a thing or two as we learn a thing or two. But that's all from me, everybody. Thanks again. I'll let Carson say his goodbyes, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope you can listen to our next podcast and hear my review of the studio.
What the hell just happened?